I'ma keep it real with you, nobody watches Avatar for the fight scenes, and if you do for that reason alone, you're probably watching it for the wrong reasons. When it comes to The Last Airbender, most people online tend to discuss the storytelling and character development, you know, the real hard-hitting analytical stuff, and I feel as though the fight scenes in the show are severely underappreciated. And I'm not saying that because they look cool, but rather because many of the fights throughout the show are more than just two people throwing hands. Many of them have deeper meanings behind them, such as character dichotomies and how the character's fighting prowess has improved, as well as showing very creative uses of bending with the fight choreography. Today, we're going to be ranking the top 5 best fights in Avatar, in my opinion, based on these criteria. The rules are that the fight must be an actual fight where both sides exchange blows intentionally, so that's excluding any fight where they wipe out nameless minions, and the fight must also last for at least 1 minute. I will also be excluding Avatar state fights since Aang is never in control of his actions until the final battle, and I will also be excluding the final battle itself, since, come on, that one's obviously the best, I don't think I need to tell you that. I will also be excluding any fights from The Legend of Korra, since those fights are a topic for a future video. Without any further ado, smash that motherfucking like button. Let's get weird, let's get wild, and let's get right into it. Here's a fact that might surprise you. Despite being enemies in the first season, Aang and Zuko never actually have a one-on-one fight until 15 episodes in the episode Bato of the Water Tribe. They've obviously had scuffles and encounters before then, hell, they come face to face in the very first episode, but their encounters are never true fights. They usually end pretty quickly. Their fight in the Abbey, that some call the Well fight, is their first true fight in the entire series, and I genuinely think it's one of the series' best. It does a perfect job at showing how skilled Aang and Zuko are at their respective elements, and how they're easily able to adapt to each other's fighting styles. The way they fight is also very in character. Zuko's rage causes him to be the one throwing the most blows, while Aang is using his typical airbender tactics of dodging and using his opponent's attacks to his advantage, which also foreshadows the next episode where he does the same thing to Zhao. The thing I like the most about this fight is how balanced it is. Aang and Zuko both use similar attacks, like this air firebending slash thing. They have like this explosion clash thing, and when they're fighting on the well itself, they're both on equal footing, literally and metaphorically. This is also one of the few instances in Season 1 before reaching the North Pole where Aang actually uses waterbending in combat, using it to deal the finishing blow, which is probably his most powerful display of it at that point in the story. It's a well choreographed, visually interesting, fun to watch fight that I feel doesn't get enough credit. I think a fight that goes unnoticed is Aang vs Zuko vs Azula in the episode The Chase. If you ask me, this fight happens in 2 phases. Phase 1 is the 3-way fight where Aang is fighting to stay alive and Zuko and Azula are fighting to capture the Avatar, but are in direct conflict with each other. Ironically, it's the two that have the same goal that end up against each other. This fight shows how calculated Azula is and how Zuko fails to see things through before acting, which we see with this gag here where Azula stops herself quickly when she notices there isn't a floor, whereas Zuko just runs right into it. Aang is also using his airbender tactics of evasion and trickery in a way that I'm sure Azula isn't prepared for since she's never fought an airbender before. The second phase of this fight is when Katara, Sokka, Toph, and Iroh come in for the save, and where Zuko starts working with the gang, leaving Azula outnumbered 6-1. They have her on the ropes, but Azula is still cunning as always and notices a moment of weakness where Iroh loses focus to recognize Toph, taking him down in the process. This results in one of the coolest visuals in the entire show in my opinion, where everybody fires a blast of their respective element at Azula, resulting in a big explosion, ending the fight with all 4 elements. Even Sokka throws his boomerang, so there's even some non-bender representation there too. This fight starts off as this 3-way Western showdown free-for-all, and it turns into a very clear 6v1 where justice is certainly served. It is such a cool fight. Sokkas Master was an episode that we honestly didn't really need. I think that might be an unpopular opinion for me. It only existed to give Sokka a new signature weapon since he couldn't use his boomerang in the Fire Nation, but it also gives him some well-needed character development, so it's not entirely pointless. However, that doesn't make the fight of this episode between Sokka and Master Piandao any less cool. This is the only fight on this list where no bending is used. This is a pure non-bending fight, which I think is great. Sure, bending is cool and all, but it's easy to get caught up in all the magic that you forget all the regular folk who don't have that magic. Seeing Sokka fight Piandao, using all the skills he had learned in the episode, like using the environment to his advantage, and the idea of the sword being an extension of his arm, and using those skills effectively, is super important for his character, and it proves the point of the episode that you don't need bending to be an effective fighter. I'm also a complete sucker for sword fights in media, especially when they show how versatile the sword can be as a weapon and as a tool. There's even a blind swordsman segment. I'm just a sucker for that kind of stuff as well. It's just a dope fight that is definitely underappreciated. Okay, I'm just gonna come out and say this. I think the Last Agni Kai is kind of overrated. Don't get it twisted, it is a beautiful scene. Obviously, I put it at number 2, and I'll obviously explain why, but it's one of those things in Avatar that I feel like a lot of people love, but don't necessarily get. This is a very artsy fight in my opinion. The only audio for the majority of the fight is just the music, which is this ambient orchestral track known as the Last Agni Kai, which is in direct contrast to what you'd expect of a fight like this. You know, we've got 2 firebenders powered up by Sozin's comment, so you'd expect there to be these loud explosions and all that. You know, you'd think they'd use like, you know, firebender chants or some kind of like battle track, but the music is this subtle, quiet track, which is really cool. Visually, this fight is fucking awe-inspiring, with the 2 colors of fire clashing together. It's also an impressive display of firebending and the power that firebenders get from the comet. For instance, we've seen Zuko use this little breakdancing technique before, but when enhanced by the comet, it becomes a legitimate threat. Azula is able to use firebending to propel herself like a jetpack, which firebenders can't normally do, at least not in this time period. Thematically, this is the culmination of both Azula and Zuko's arcs. 2 siblings fighting for the throne, with one losing their mind and the other as collected as ever. It showcases Azula's declining mental state as well, since if you look closely, she never actually lands a blow on Zuko until he directly throws himself in front of her lightning to save Katara, and this shows how selfless Zuko became throughout his journey. I don't know if we should count the Katara versus Azula section here, since it's technically not an Agni Kai, but that's also a very great fight. It shows some very creative uses of water bending by freezing both of them, and then Katara thawing out where she needs to move in order to take Azula down. All in all, the Last Agni Kai is a fantastic fight. It's very artsy, and it shows the immense power and skill that our characters have. And the number 1 best non-Avatar state fight scene, in my opinion, is Aang and Katara versus Zuko and Azula in the Crossroads of Destiny. This is one of those fights that'll make your jaw drop when you see it for the first time. It starts off with Aang and Katara fighting Azula and winning before Zuko comes into his sister's aid to everybody's surprise. The fight then turns into 2 fights, Aang versus Azula and Katara versus Zuko, both of which have some fantastic uses of bending. Katara and Zuko fight with these giant water and fire whips, which is super cool, while Azula holds her own against Aang, despite him using 3 elements at once. This fight is also great for seeing how Aang's earthbending has progressed in such a short time, with some amazing feats like the Earth Wave and the Crystal Armor. This proves to not be enough, however, because Azula incapacitates Aang for a short while, going back into a 1v2 with Katara versus Zuko and Azula. We see Katara use the octopus form, which was first shown at the start of the season, and comes back into action once the Dai Li show up, and for the first time, Aang goes into the Avatar state intentionally before Azula shoots him with lightning, striking him down. Aang learned the hard way that what Roku told him was indeed true, that the Avatar state is extremely powerful, but also makes him incredibly vulnerable. Katara rescues him with some amazing water bending, and Iroh provides them with some cover so they can escape, betraying his nation in the process. Aside from the fight choreography and creative uses of bending, this fight is interesting because it's the first major battle where the heroes actually lose. There was only ever one point where Azula might have lost, and it was Zuko that turned the tide of that battle, tilting the odds in Azula's favor. And if he hadn't done that and betrayed Iroh, then Azula would probably have lost that fight. From then on, Aang and Katara were on the ropes for almost the entire fight, and it was made especially unfair once the Dai Li came in. Just goes to show that the heroes can't always win, because fights with stakes like these are never fair. So those have been my personal favorite fight scenes in Avatar, not including Avatar states. But that is just my opinion. Let me know what your favorite fight scenes are in the comments down below. Leave a like if you enjoyed this video, and be sure to subscribe for more Avatar videos. I've been MattCMG. I'll see y'all next week. Thanks for watching.